Good afternoon, everybody. I ask you can take your seats and we can get started. I know that we're all really keen to get into the networking, but we have to. I've just said to somebody, you have to earn the right to talk. You're going to have to sit through an hour of speeches, and before we'll let you grab the coffees and the foods and stuff. So. Good afternoon and welcome. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you all here today to our Celebrating Pharmacy Research event. I'm Malcolm Harrison. I'm the Chair of the Board of Trustees of Pharmacy Research UK. I won't be speaking for long today, you'll be pleased to hear. But before we move on to the main event of what I know will be a really fantastic and fascinating set of talks, I just wanted to give you a bit of a background into Pharmacy Research UK about what we are, where we've come from and what we do. So personally, I've been involved with Pharmacy Research UK for around 8 years now. Only feels like yesterday, but I was interviewed downstairs by the then chair. First, I was a trustee of the charity, and more recently, I've been chairing the Board of Trustees. So Pharmacy Research UK was formed back in 2012 through the merger of the Pharmaceutical Trust for Educational and Charitable Objects. That just rolls off the tongue. And the RPS's very own Pharmacy Practice Research Trust. So those two organisations, which actually have individually long histories dating back to the 1840s, I think one of them, came together in 2012 to form Pharmacy Research UK. We're not a large organisation. We don't have unlimited resources, but we do work incredibly hard to make sure we make as big an impact in the world of pharmacy research as we possibly can. And we do that by using the resources we have very carefully, by ensuring that we fund academically robust research projects. And we've got a fantastic scientific advisory panel that give the trustees the advice on what we need to do and where we should be investing and allocating money into research. And we also not just fund the research, but we fund the researchers. And that's really what we're here for, is how do we be that first launch pad for the great talent that's going to be the researchers in pharmacy for the future. We really see that as an important part of what we do. We also work to maximise our impact by partnering with other organisations so that we can leverage and stretch and grow the resources we have, so we can do even more to support researchers in pharmacy. And I'm delighted that several of our partnering organisations are here today, so thank you for coming along. And it's really good as well to see so many former recipients of our funds and also current recipients of our funds as well. So our mission as a charity is not just to exist, it's to support and to promote pharmacy research and to help pharmacy professionals. And it's really important that we continue in that work. And we just had a trustees meeting today, actually, just thinking about the future and how do we make sure we're here in the future to continue to support people. But really, we're here for you, for the researchers, and for the businesses and organisations that fund and support and get behind and create the environment that the research can happen. It's also a pleasure to be back here at the RPS. The RPS and the PRUK have a very long history together, and whilst we're currently a separate body, we're separate from the RPS entirely now, and we do work very closely with them. Remarkably, we're just looking at this recently, the PRUK has now awarded more than £2 million out into research into pharmacy recently, which is really, really good. We're very proud of that. We want to keep going and going. And events like today are designed to support that, to raise the profile of the work we do, to raise the profile of research in pharmacy, and to enable us to continue and moving forward. So with that in mind, in a moment, I'm going to introduce you to our first speaker, but I just need to run through a bit of housekeeping. So I'm assured there are no fire alarms planned for today. So if the bell does ring, there is a fire, we do need to get out. I suggest that's probably the best thing for all, and I think through that way. Toilets are in the lift area if you need it, and please make sure your phones are on silent. As I said, after all the speeches today, there will be refreshments, cakes and snacks and drinks and so on. It'll be a really good opportunity. We've got the floor here for quite a while, so please do stay around, get to know some of your fellow colleagues and some of the people that do join us. I'm just getting to the end of the boring bit, so you're here for the good stuff. Right. You'll find trustees of the charity in the room. We've also got the PRUK team here. So you've got Halima, Desh and Guy. Can you put your hands up? Oh, there it is. There. So if you need any help, if you want to talk to us about the actual charity itself, then do find us and come say hello. So it gives me great pleasure now to introduce our first speaker, David Webb, who is the Chief Pharmacist for England. I'm sure David will be known to many of you already, and we're delighted he's been able to spare some time today to come talk. Among his many responsibilities, he's very active in discussions around the place of research within pharmacy, through initiatives like the Pharmacy Research Advisory Group, and which he co-chairs with Professor Christine Bond. So very welcome, David.
Malcolm. Uh, that's terrific. Thank you. It's, that was a real high spot for me, getting a round of applause. So I think I'll go now.
Yeah.
It doesn't normally happen at the end. Yeah, so Malcolm said I've sort of nipped in really. So I'm at something called the Medical Leaders Summit, which sounds like it's a real high point, but it's on the same level as us, and it's just around the corner. The good thing is it's really close by.
Yeah.
The bad thing is I've got to go back and give a talk there, so I won't be able to sort of listen to the rest of the conversations today. So I'm really sorry about that. But I felt it was important to come here and just amplify Malcolm's words about my support for this endeavour. I think it's really, really important, and I'm conscious that PRUK has probably maintained an energy and a focus and given encouragement to people in a time where it may have been quite lean previously, and it's positive now to be moving into a sort of a policy position where these things are getting recognised as being, more important. Thinking about how does all this start, really? So today we've got the trustees, we've got a team, of people in receipt of awards, people who hope to get awards, and everybody else who supports them. And I think in the trajectory of a career, it's really important to reflect on how that sort of energy starts. And increasingly, I think it's located in the initial education and training standards for professions. So for pharmacists, you'll know that those are located in 4 domains, of which one is education and research. So it's very clear that that is at the inception of education and training, and it rolls through into foundation training and beyond. I think also the GPHC will be consulted fairly soon on revision to the initial education and training standards for pharmacy technicians. And I think it'd be very positive to see those 4 similar domains play out, particularly for this audience, education and research. Why is it important? I think there were 3 main reasons. One is being part of a research active organisation usually means that you're delivering better patient care. That, I think, is a very significant emphasis of why we do what we do. The second thing is the evidence suggests that it leads to greater career satisfaction, that people enjoy their work more, they are more thoughtful about what they do. So it's vital in that sense. And then the third one I wanted to raise is somewhat more external. So in the current situation, at least around for healthcare in England, we're being sort of encouraged to think of 3 strategic shifts. And those are acute to community and primary care. They are sickness to prevention and digital to analog. No, analog to digital. Betray my heritage. I'm like the guy who had the CDs and then went back to the LP. But research and innovation are going to be very important in delivering all 3 of those ambitions. So we find ourselves on the cusp of something very significant. Research is a priority for the UK to be a global leader in life sciences, and Lord O'Shaughnessy's review pointed very strongly to clinical trial participation and commercial clinical trials at that. It may not be the sort of reason we've gathered today, but it is part of the spectrum of research endeavour. I think our work is important in that context too. But Lord Darcy's stock take on the health of the NHS pointed also to declining numbers of clinical academics, and we all know how important those positions are in terms of bridging between healthcare delivery and development professions, and also taking the benefits of research back into patient care. So I'm really pleased that we are starting to do things in our sector that start to address some of those issues. So we did a piece of work. I always joke that it was the longest lived short life working group I've ever been part of. It's seen off 2 chief pharmaceutical officers in England, and we're still going with it. The focus of that was about a structure of a clinical academic career. It's almost anticipating what Lord Darcy was going to find in his review. As part of that, there was a call for evidence, research experience that people have in the field, and collated by Natasha Calendar, and the report was published on that basis, and then we move forward into a work plan, which we're now picking up through pharmacy research advisory group that Malcolm mentioned. The really positive thing about all this work is that it is essentially collaborative. So there's strands that we might be able to pursue in a policy sense. There are strands that NIHR are pursuing, and it's brilliant to see Debbie and talk about the power and the importance of pharmacy incubator and the basic quality incubator as well. All of these things are part of the tapestry that we need to be sort of weaving around research. And my final thoughts are we're doing a lot of thinking at the moment about professional leadership in the UK and how that needs to be a sort of cohesive and coherent voice for the future. This institution is suggesting some really positive steps in that direction too. But I think there's something really fundamental about research in professions, because I think a defining characteristic of a profession is one that curates a body of knowledge that's particular to that profession, and one that generates new knowledge that is important for that profession. That, to me, singularly points to research, and I think that says how important what everybody here has been doing in the past and how it will continue to be really important in the future. And it's just a pleasure to be able to sort of acknowledge the contribution of PRUK to that tapestry that we're all trying to weave for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Just while we've got David, and he's only got a few minutes left, I didn't know if anybody had any questions that they wanted to ask David, particularly about pharmacy research or about any other aspects. Right.
You talk about the importance of research there, and one of the challenges is getting funding for that research. And obviously the history of PRUK has come from a pot of money which was 12 years ago. Is it, from your information, your knowledge, I come from a community pharmacy background, so I'm not aware of all the pots of money, but there's many pots of money, but getting funding which is going to be managed by PRUK is not easy, so it's not. Can you give us any direction or any help in sort of finding pots of money?
Unfortunately, Raymond.
Yeah. Check.
It's really important. I mean, one of the things we were just chatting about before, coming up to say a few words, was the role of NIHR and its funding streams. My sense is that those are becoming more apparent to us, and we are potentially getting better at accessing some of those. But it's an absolute truth when we look at number of submissions versus successful applicants. We collectively are underrepresented in that. So there's something about the existing streams, persuading, cajoling, and doing better at getting those. And then there's the other point you raised, which is about what are those. Outside of that framework, what are the other streams? And I think part of our ambition is if we generate this movement that says this is not a sort of optional part of being a professional, this is an inherent part of being a professional. One of the sort of positive side effects of that is that it creates an expectation that it needs to be funded and done. And some of the kind of resource that goes into it isn't necessarily funding, but also the time to do it too. And so building arguments around, people like to use different titles, but talk about the allocation of time as opposed to the protection of time. Then I think that is a similar resource argument that we need to establish for the future.
Any other questions? I'll come to the lady here.
Hi, so I went to the talk by James Williamson last week, and he was talking about team bonuses for trial. So when you have active researchers that are becoming principal and chief investigators to trials, and as a postdoc pharmacist, it's been quite difficult in the NHS because you don't get any acknowledgement or any funding to bring back to pharmacy. And that is that coming soon?
To come to. I think there are two answers. I mean, one is to keep pushing, and to remind, because, you know, as an idea gets announced, sometimes it sort of fades a little bit, and then we said to keep going. The other one is fairly soon there'll be, so we've done the Darcy, not we, the government's done the Darcy diagnostic on the state of the health service. There's the 10-year plan then that follows as a build from that. My expectation is that the 10-year plan will be a much more, more people will be able to contribute to the 10-year plan, possibly were able to contribute to the Darcy review. So those sort of thoughts, I think, need to go into the 10-year plan. My advice would be, don't expect that policymakers will necessarily put them in, but if others of us can contribute through a portal to remind them about those sort of issues and say how important it is, because very often it's seen as something that's nice to do, somewhat abstract, and in some way not part of the core business of health delivery. And I think we just need to sort of reset that and say, there are these 4 domains. Delivery of healthcare is really important, but so is education and research. And that's what ultimately drives forward the care of the population, isn't it, really? Because just doing the same thing all the time really well doesn't sort of make the big deliverables for the future. It's the research that tells us what it is we should be doing, and those are the things we do for the future. So I think any opportunity to sort of articulate those sort of thoughts, that's part of the 10-year plan. And I think that's legit because it was mentioned within the Darcy diagnostic. It's a really important part of what we do.
Look, Brian, and then just one more there.
John Edwards, I'm not a pharmacist, I'm a trustee.
Nice to meet you, Brian.
The world of medicine is moving at an astonishing pace at the minute, and pharmacy is no exception. You've got a 10-year plan. Can you just give us a hint of what the pharmacist might look like at the end of the 10-year plan?
At the end of the 10-year
You're doing the 10-year plan?
Yes. So we haven't started. So this is everybody's chance to get involved at the start of the journey. What we've had so far is the sort of diagnostic that tells us what's wrong with the health service and the experience of patients. However, I think the trajectory for pharmacists and pharmacy is becoming sort of ever more clear as we sort of reach a point where pharmacists will register as prescribers in 2026. I think that sets us on a very clear pathway about future delivery. I think a different kind of relationship with our patients. There's something quite unique about being the initial decision maker as opposed to a subsequent decision maker. That to me raises all sorts. So I'm getting to answer. That raises all sorts of questions in my mind about relationships with patients, consent, a whole raft of issues that we may, you know, we've been conscious of, but may not have been on the forefront of our mind. And along that trajectory, my view is that research needs to inform the steps we take. So research in those new paradigms of care are going to be very important. Ultimately, I think we will see a greater focus on clinical activity than traditional activity. But there is a caveat to all of that, because if you're in it, is it in this building, the genomics workshop is also happening? It's all going on today. Some of the medicines we're dealing with now are very traditional in terms of their requirements. So we've been through a kind of era of solid dosage oral medication that we've attempted to put into robots, automate, and then distribute. Some of the very cutting edge medicines require quite traditional skills, as in they need to be aseptically assembled, they need to be injected or infused. And we need to make sure in this journey that we're treasuring people who have a scientific appreciation what's at stake and the technical skills to do some of those things as well. So it's the thrust is very much clinical, but I would say that we need to sort of cherish the scientific basis of what we do in all of that too. So I think there's sort of two tracks through all to the future.
Thank you. And just one final quick question, I hope.
Yeah, it's quick. I won't stand up, but I was going to say,
There's no need to.
what can we do to standardise some of that implementation of research? Because it's really inspiring when you work and you see some research that's done by a pharmacy professional, and it inspires you to want to do research yourself. But it's so variable, that implementation, you know, within trust to trust, nation to nation. So what can we do to maybe standardise some of that?
I think it's a little bit cultural in the sense that many of us will have got used to waiting for the guidance that derives from the primary studies before we take steps necessary to make that happen. So one of the sort of ambitions of this new focus on research to create a culture where we're looking out for the new findings and we're thinking much sooner about how those influence practice. Now, there isn't, to an extent, there's a point to not reacting to the first in time study because, you know, probability would tell us that we don't always find the right thing on the first go. But I think having appetite for looking at the delivery of care through a very contemporary lens, as opposed to waiting for a sort of tertiary source to tell us what should be happening. I think that's an important shaping piece of the work we need to do, and that's about, once again, I think, to professional leadership, to be really comfortable with research and what it tells us and potentially what it doesn't tell us.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much for your time. Can you give a round of applause for our figure? You speak up whenever you need to. Okay. Super, and now delighted to invite our next speaker to stand up. Professor Parastou-Donnier is the Chief Scientist of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society, a crucial role for understanding the place of research within pharmacy. She's held this role for more than 2 years, and as well as being a pharmacist and her exceptional career in academia, Parastou has formally trained in psychological theory and research methods, and has published extensively on behavioural pharmacy. So welcome, thank you.
Just have it.
Turn it on.
No, just have it.
Oh, you can tell it. It's fine. You can use that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, it's really lovely to be here. Thank you very much for the invite, and it's great to be speaking with you. I do actually have a set of slides. I was very impressed with David Webb's approach, but I think academia has taught me have a lectern, stand behind it, and I'm safer. So with all that in mind, I'm going to be talking to you about research, and I guess with my role at the RPS, tell you a little bit about what we do at the RPS. Now, I don't know what questions you've got, but here are just some legitimate questions that one might have about pharmacy research. And what is it? Actually, what is it not? What kind of work? You know, audit, service evaluation. What is not research, and what is? What can be research? What are good topics? Why do it? Why don't people do it? We love a bit of navel gazing, I think, in when we do research, you know, actually, let's just look at the behaviors of the people. But you know, actually, how do you do it if you decide that you want to motivate people to do it? And then how do we move towards recognizing others who do it, and so on? So the whole host of questions. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to provide any, if all of the answers there, but just one starting point. And this is for anybody who wants to kind of maybe dip their toes in, or actually take an artifact from the world around us and just kind of read into that and look at the nuances around that. So here we've got a study that's been selected, is from this week. It's been in the news. So actually, what is it about that makes it newsworthy? Where is it published? What's the topic of interest? It's in the Lancet. Who are the people who get, I think there was a point being made about this earlier, who are the people who get their names on the paper? And if you actually access the paper, there's a really nice, neat protocol to look at as well, which is appended. So kind of, if you want a starting point, I would say, obviously we've got people online as well, take an artifact from the real world. And ultimately, it's about that greater impact. What is it that happens at the end of it? And that's the interpretation from this particular study. So we maybe we want to get to a point where we've got Lancet papers coming out from the pharmacy profession and the research that they do. Now, I mentioned that the majority of my talk is about my job at the RPS, and this is a small but perfectly formed team, in my view, at the RPS within the science and research team. So there's myself, and we have Diane, Lauren, and Leah, and these are our team objectives. So we are here to try and increase and develop research capacity and capability within pharmacy, and also to increase the profile of science and research within pharmacy. There's been a point made here already about the importance of science and how we make sure that future pharmacists have got they retain their scientific basis that they need to use for their practice, and so on. So actually, if I move forward to the next slide, this is a terminology we would that I hear at home because of my husband's work. So front office, back office. So front office here, the top line is maybe what members and people out there would see as the focus of our work. But back office in the bottom bit is what we contribute to for the RPS itself. So when there are surveys and so on, can we do the analysis and contribute to the report writing to make sure that the work that the organisation does is robust as well. And in terms of the groups that feed into the science and research team, we have the Science and Research Committee, and that's composed of 3 working groups listed there in yellow, but also we have the Industrial Pharmacists Advisory Group and the Antimicrobial Expert Advisory Group also feeding into the green, and there is the Science and Research Committee, and that's the main committee that reports to myself in terms of any work that we might do on science and research. And within the team itself, now, we had a team meeting earlier today and we talked about QR codes. So in no way am I going to be doing killing by QR codes. That's my new phrase. But if people wanted to scan that QR code, that takes you to the page where we outline actually the kind of services that we want to provide to members, and we do provide to members. So if anybody wanted to develop their research project, so I think that takes you to the form where you can type in what your query is, what kind of help you need. And we try our best. So it could be ourselves within the team, I've listed the team, or it could be that we reach out to colleagues within the Science and Research Committee, for example, that I listed earlier, or others in our contact in order to try and help develop your query, whatever that might be. It relates to research. And then, of course, sometimes, a lot of the times, people are successful, so they want to maybe go for an interview. And again, that's kind of part of it. So an interview to get funding for their research, or maybe an interview because, or a mock viva because they've written up and submitted their work and they're going to get a viva. So it's a whole sort of breadth of things. And I guess we did a bit of mapping to look at the kinds of support that we provided in 2023. And that gives you an overview of the kinds of queries that we received. And so we want to hear from people. Please do get in touch with us. And if you didn't want to kind of jump on and complete the forms, then we have got some resources on our website. So the top line there is within our kind of member portal, and that's our Research and Evaluation Guidance Hub. And at the bottom, I've got the NIHR e-learning that was developed with monies from NIHR, and that's free actually to, you don't have to be a Pharmaceutical Society member in order to access that. So that's there as well for upskilling in terms of research know-how. Somebody here mentioned about sources of funding. So actually, we've got the NIHR, we've got PRUK, but where else can you go to get funding? And I think sometimes certainly when you're within academia, you kind of take for granted you can go to your university's website and the grant sources are listed there. But we spotted a gap, and the team very kindly put together funding opportunities on the pages. And this is, anybody can access these. And again, another QR code there, but we've listed the available funding there. Just going to scroll through. So various types, various levels of funding, different funders, and so on. And again, I think, you know, we want your feedback. If you access that and you think, well, actually, this funder is not there, it needs to, you know, get in touch with us. We'll happily look at sources that members also recommend to us. I'm not presenting this as a complete list, but it's as complete as we could make it in order to disseminate. So the other work that we do, and again, we have the Science and Research Committee to thank for that, is we contribute to the Science and Research stream at the RPS conference. So we've got the morning session there and the afternoon session. So the morning session is focusing more on science of pharmacy, and we've got some external speakers coming along. And then we've got the afternoon session, which is more focused on research and looking at awardees of some recipients of medals that we've presented, and I'll show you those in a moment. But also this year, we've got oral presentations from people who submitted research abstracts to come to the conference. And of course, throughout the conference, we've also got the posters, the research abstracts, and then the innovative practice posters as well. So I think there might be one or two more places left if you haven't booked yet. So please do come along and meet the team there. So the awards that I mentioned. So actually at the moment, if you'd like to help us nominate for the Hanbury Memorial Medal, I think this used to be called a Lifetime Achievement Award, but this is for somebody working at the top of their game really, or having sort of contributed a whole career. Specifically in terms of the pharmaceutical sciences. So it's phrased here in terms of research in the natural history and chemistry of drugs, which is a broad church, so to speak. So we could look at pharmaceutics within that as well. And soon we will be launching the Opera 25. So this is the Outstanding Pharmacy Early Career Researcher Award. We've been running this for 2 years in a row now, and then we're going to be launching Opera 25 soon. So again, we need your help to nominate, please. The criteria are there. I think there is a QR code coming soon. Apologies. Okay, now I thought, well, why should I put this slide up? It's something that I had in the slide deck somewhere. And actually, it was just to say that actually we talk about research and we talk about wanting to encourage people to do research, but there are also difficulties. And there are, I would say, based on my experience, there are specific difficulties that maybe affect certain sectors of society. So without wanting to give away too much, the webinar that we did about the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, please do have a watch or a listen, or however way your means of consumption of these things is, because I think there is a lot that can be done in order to promote colleagues to do research within pharmacy and within academia as a whole. But also I've listed there some of my own experience and expertise. So if anybody out there wants to get specific guidance on their grant applications, again, you know, you need only contact us. We had a QR code there. And finally, I guess I've got reference to my blog there. Why do I want to highlight that? Because actually we've got some journals that are Pharmaceutical Society journals. They're published in collaboration with Oxford University Press. They're listed here, and they are accessible to RPS members and others, of course, as well. And every month I write a blog in the Pharmaceutical Journal where I reflect on some newly published papers within the journals, but I bring in a bit of it's not a teaser as such, but it's a discussion maybe if colleagues want to kind of read that and write to me, give me your thoughts. So for example, the latest one I've got about the importance of citations. What are your views? What do you think makes papers get cited more than others? And then look at that self-plagiarized research, what it means and who's doing it. Maybe I've answered the questions in my second slide, who knows? There's so many, there they are. I'm not even going to pause, I'm afraid. So I'm going to move on and say, that's the conference. So if you could join us, that would be fantastic. And I think I am maybe duty bound to also show you these, which is the RPS Roadshow. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Thank you. That was a really good insight into the role that you play as chief scientist rather at the RPF, and also the support that we have, and a really good plug into what's going on here. So, but it's the price we pay for lodging here sometimes. So a key part of what we hope to do through this event was to give some former and current Pharmacy Research UK grant holders the chance to talk a bit about some of the research work that they're doing and what that has meant to them in their research careers. As a relatively small funder, Pharmacy Research UK is always trying to ensure that we're supporting both robust and impactful research, but also, as I mentioned earlier, really important to us that we're funding researchers who can build and progress their research journey. We have a selection of speakers now who have all received different Pharmacy Research UK awards with different funding partners as well. And to open up, I'd like to invite Dr. Pinky Chambers to the stage. Pinky is an oncology specialist pharmacist with 20 years of clinical experience working with partners, among others, and was herself awarded a recipient, of our PRUK award in partnership with the British Oncology Pharmacy Association, or BOPA.
Okay, yeah.
BOPA, thank you very much.
That should be yeah, just click.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And so I'm going to talk a little bit today about the BOPA PR UK award mainly, actually, and a little bit about my research and some of the hubs in the road. Because actually this award is still ongoing, so you know we are still doing the analysis. We're not that much to report, but I'll let you know. This award is a great award, and it's something that I set up myself. It's something that I set up in 2016 with a colleague, Carl Booth. So we were actually, we have a research committee within BOPA. I don't know if you guys know BOPA, but it's British Oncology Pharmacists Association. Most cancer pharmacists are members of it. We have loads and loads of resources, and we've got a research committee which is chaired at the moment by Melanie Dolby. We have our chair rotating every 3 years, and we have more than 20 people on our research committee. We're really inclusive. Anyone that wants to do research can join us, and you know we have lots of different work streams. So because we have such an active workforce wanting to help on the research side, in 2016 we tried to set up a collaboration. So a small piece of funding, because a lot of people do struggle with that stepping stone into trying to get into research. So we agreed with our committee, because we're a charity, we have membership money, but we also get we also had a big conference one year where we raised quite a bit of funds, and as a charity we need to spend them. So we agreed with our committee to start off with a £5,000 matched funding donation from them, and this would roll over if there wasn't a recipient. And yeah, so that's the award. Since 2016 we've had some great recipients, and I think Chen Sheng's there just behind Rachel, and he presented this year on some work in cardio-oncology. We've had apps developed, my CML app, so you know it really kind of helped step into that. We've had Terry Ng, who's at the School of Pharmacy, published some work in the European Journal of Haematology. So some of the work that she did was really helpful during COVID around telephone clinics and remote monitoring. So, it's an award that we're really proud of, and we've set it up to offer 10,000 match funding as well. Because we are really proud of it. We'd love to offer more, but we just don't have the resources. So yeah, it is an award that benefits the whole community. Everyone gets the publication. So we mail shot it out, we put it in our newsletter, and also the recipients come back and present at our conference, which is lovely. And you know, Chen presented this year, and we had loads of really positive feedback about how can we change pharmacy practice. And so, you know, it really kind of echoes some of what David was saying. You know, we do some research, and then, you know, we have like the energy there in the community to really push forward and champion that implementation work, which is amazing. We've had publications all crediting BOPA, which is nice. And also there's been some studies. So for example, Emma Foreman did a study called NZD. This was, I think, one of our third recipients. And this involved pharmacist PIs across the country in a recruitment study. So she did lots of training, which was funded externally by BOPA, and got pharmacists to include trained up to be PIs, which was, you know, a lovely thing to give back to the community. So what was it? What was the reason that I decided to apply? So I was awarded a NIHR PhD. I finished that PhD, and I was kind of at a little bit of a crossroads, because straight after my PhD, I'd gone mainly back into clinical practice, and I was CI of another grant, which was an RFPB grant, Research for Patient Benefit, through the NIHR. And it was a data study. We just finished this data study. We got loads of patient and public involvement, and a lot of the patients were asking about a different question from the data that we had. So the original study was all around treatment delays and how these impact on survival, and this has just been published in the European Journal of Cancer and the Oncologist, the two studies in ovarian and breast cancer. But what patients were asking was, what about when treatments are discontinued early? And we didn't have the capacity to do that analysis, because the data, you know, the data cleaning took a really long time. So I thought actually the biggest cost in time was actually getting the data in the first place. We went, you know, it was quite a bit of a headache to get it from Public Health England. So it was chemotherapy data linked with other data sets. And I have a PhD student, and you know, he was really keen on being a co-applicant on a grant as well. So we thought actually this is a really nice opportunity to look at, you know, some of his ideas of around regional variation in early discontinuation, and actually to look at this question, which our patient panels really wanted us to look at. And it's actually thrown up some really interesting results so far. One of the things in our breast cohort is like everyone does something very different in terms of how many cycles delivered. It's really not standardized. So, you know, where, you know, national guidelines at the time of the data say we use 6 cycles of treatment, actually there's some hospitals that are using 8 cycles of treatment, and actually we're really kind of learning how to use that data and try and find some get findings that are really relevant now to the clinical practice. What I've really learned about this and the collaborations is actually that you know, what the clinicians are, we've got clinical steering panels with this award, and what our clinicians want and sometimes what our patients want are quite different. So the patients on our panel were treated a few years ago when like standard treatment was 6 cycles, but the clinical questions now from the clinicians are slightly different. It's about anthracycline sparing. It's about, you know, how do, you know, what, you know, some hospitals are using 8 cycles, their capacity, you know, some hospitals just can't deliver it because capacity won't allow. So it's about trying to use that data to meet both purposes and, you know, really try and get something meaningful out, which is really important. The ovarian cancer data is a little bit simpler than breast cancer data at the moment. So yeah, we're ploughing ahead with that analysis as planned. But yeah, so it's been great because it's allowed us to learn some different techniques and bring that into the clinical oncology community. It's allowed us to bring in more support with the charities, so Overcome and Breast Cancer Now. And yeah, these collaborations are just really valuable for my clinical academic career in the future. So yeah, thank you, PRUK.
Okay. Thank you very much, Winky. Next up, we've got Dr. Natalie Weir. Natalie is based at the University of Strathclyde and was another recipient of a partnership award. This through the partnership with PRUK and the College of Mental Health Pharmacy, working to develop a community pharmacy service to support people with depression. She can hopefully tell us a bit more about that work and what it's meant for her.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me here today. I did get up very early to be here, 4:30 in the morning, traveling from Glasgow, but it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I had a great journey on the way here, thinking about what I was going to say. So yes, Pharmacy Research UK gave me £20,000. I'm incredibly grateful, and I'm really delighted to tell you the research results and a little bit about how this supported my research career, because it absolutely has supported my research career. First things first, I am not standing here alone. I've had a fantastic team behind me, supporting me. And I think that's what I really liked about the Pharmacy Research UK funding, because it really, forces you to think about your mentorship team, really forces you to think about how are these people going to benefit you and help you. And it kind of forces you to check in with them to make sure you're doing the research as robust as possible. So I really valued that from the process. Another thing I valued from the Pharmacy Research UK funding process is that they were really striving to make sure the patient and public involvement was as robust as possible. So before starting the research project, I had 3 people with lived experience helping me to conceptualise the project, and Pharmacy Research UK panel really challenged me to say, actually, have you got a diverse panel? Have you looked at all the different ways to engage different people with lived experience? So I really benefited from that, because I did go out to other organisations to find other people with lived experience, and they definitely brought new perspectives into it. So in terms of my research project, it was about developing the evidence base for community pharmacy depression projects. So really briefly, why do I care about depression? Well, it's incredibly prevalent in community. It is increasing readily, especially since the pandemic, and there is service capacity issues since the pandemic, and I fundamentally believe a change in health-seeking behaviour since the pandemic. I work part-time as a community pharmacist 1 day a week, and people are coming into a pharmacy and they don't want to go to the GP. They don't want to bother them about a mental health issue or a wellbeing concern. So I do think actually mental health concerns could become increasingly problematic if the people in society are resistant to use the valuable GP resources. I also think pharmacy depression services should be delivered from a community pharmacy because they're accessible. They are more likely to be in deprived areas where depression we know is more common. Pretty popular places, up to 70% of people visit a community pharmacy monthly. And there's actually decent UK research suggesting that actually community pharmacy staff are quite willing to help people with mental health concerns. They would like to be able to do more to help this population. And there's also a bunch of supportive policy, some of them specifically saying that community pharmacy should develop mental health services, and some of them alluding to the benefits of more accessible mental health services. So I think there's a strong narrative as to why we should have community pharmacy depression services. However, whenever I tried to get funding to do this, this was the response I was met with. There was this general perception that the funding panels did not think that community pharmacy could deliver mental health services. So I think there's 2 things going on here. One of them may be an outdated perception of the role of pharmacy compared to the other healthcare professionals. And also, I think people still think that mental health is a specialist condition, where I would argue that even the generalists need to be really knowledgeable about depression, for example, because of how prevalent it is. And these people are managed in community. They're not in specialist centres. These are within our primary care. So what we did with the money that Pharmacy Research UK gave us is we started off with a systematic review. So I wanted to compile all the international evidence on what community pharmacy services had been trialled and delivered across the globe. I identified 5 different ways that community pharmacy can help people with depression. This included services to give people advice about depression, advice about their medicines, services which would screen people perhaps at risk of depression or with undiagnosed depression, services which really specifically focused on improving adherence to antidepressants, and a few services focusing on medication review and optimisation, and only one service really focusing on the prescribing and kind of additional support to people with depression from community pharmacy. So actually, a lot that community pharmacy can do. Now, what I would say is that the evidence that these services could improve depression outcomes was quite limited. There isn't strong evidence that these services make patients, happier. However, there was strong evidence that they could improve adherence to antidepressants and that patients liked them. They thought they were acceptable, and they actually found that they learned more about their medication and their healthcare. So there was clear benefits to it. What we then did is we took these 5 studies to a multi-stakeholder consensus exercise. It's called an e-Delphi. And we said, okay, here are the 5 services we found from the literature. What do you think could be another range of additional services? And this is what our stakeholders told us. They said, actually, a signposting and referral service from community pharmacy would be good. A public awareness campaign where community pharmacy can be involved and we can raise awareness of the role of pharmacy in supporting people with depression. Possibly a perinatal mental health service that could be delivered from community pharmacies. And lastly, suicide prevention activities where the pharmacy staff are more knowledgeable and aware about the risk of suicide and how to address that if somebody does come into the pharmacy in acute distress. So what we did is we took those 5 services I identified from the systematic review, lumped it together with these 4 postulated services. And I got the stakeholders to say, so what's a priority? What do we focus on actually implementing? And this was the results. It was considered that adherence support services, advice services, signposting and referral services, and suicide prevention activities were the highest priority. This is what our UK community pharmacy staff should be doing to support people with depression. Now, I really like this because the first 3 that I mentioned essentially involve going into the pharmacy, getting a little bit of advice, and then leaving. And that's the kind of bread and butter of community pharmacy. That's what we do. We give advice. So to me, I can absolutely see how this could integrate in routine practice. And for me, the suicide prevention stuff to me is a key facilitator to make this a success. So if we implement this alongside training so that staff are suicide aware, they know how to intervene, they will then have the confidence to deliver these services, which will overcome some of the known barriers that we have. So next up, I now have a PhD student, Mr. Hisham Al-Shamari. He is going to take these results forward to implement this service within Scotland. We're doing it in Scotland and not in England because we are now aware of the new medicine service depression arm, which didn't exist when we were thinking about this. So we're going to focus on Scotland to develop a service which incorporate all these elements. We're going to start off with some qualitative interviews with patients, then with health service providers, and then we're going to do a pharmacoepidemiological quantitative study to actually showcase the extent of non-adherence to antidepressants, to really show how this could address a problem that we think exists in society. So that's the research results and the progression, but a little bit on the benefits to my research career. So I forgot to introduce who I am, sorry, but I did my undergraduate degree 9 or 10 years ago. I then qualified after doing my pre-reg in hospital pharmacy. I was going to be a hospital pharmacist. And then last minute, I changed my mind, went and did a PhD, worked part-time in community pharmacy. Since then, I was postdocing 1 or 2 days a week in community pharmacy, and I qualified as a lecturer. Sorry, I was promoted to lecturer about a couple years ago. And I guess what I would say from a research journey is I love research. I love doing research. I love the process. I like how it goes from an idea to actually executing it to seeing the results. To me, that just makes sense for me. And my PhD really taught me that. However, my PhD topic actually turns out I wasn't that passionate about. Whereas this topic here, developing depression services, is absolutely in my area of interest. I felt like it made me more passionate about the research I was doing and essentially my job. So you absolutely gave me job satisfaction for a good year or 2. Since then, I have been doing some more work on stigma in pharmacy because I fundamentally believe if we make pharmacies more accessible, just nicer environments, people will be more likely to talk about their mental health. I think there's some fundamental basics to health service that could be improved. Innovations are great, but actually we just need to make the environment nice and compassionate and empathetic. And I'm also involved in a study which will hopefully get funded, which is about suicide prevention services in Scottish primary care. Since this project, I also joined the NIHR Mental Health Incubator Programme, and I absolutely believed had I not had this funding, I would not have been able to join that programme. And that was excellent because that involved incredible intense coaching. So if anyone's interested in the NIHR, networks, please get in contact with me because I really found it fantastic. And the other thing is I built a UK network. I'm from Scotland. Everyone I talk to is in Scotland. We all know each other. So actually being able to go to the College of Mental Health Pharmacy conference, speak to other people has been illuminating because there's a lot more people like me across England, Northern Ireland and Wales, which has been fantastic to integrate with. I've also developed some new identities as line manager. Line managing was fine, but the recruitment process was very challenging. Turns out there's really strict employment laws. You don't know what you don't know. Obviously, budget holder, that was challenging at times because the way the university processes money just makes no sense to me at all. And also as principal investigator, which I'm incredibly proud to have been and to have delivered at this project. So yeah, that's all from me. If anyone wants to get in touch about research in general, about this project, for anything, please do, because I love talking about research and mental health. So please just get in contact with me.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Thank you for sharing your story about your research, your journey as well, and what it's meant to you. That's fantastic. And it's quite clear the passion comes through there, doesn't it? Really, really good. Next up, we've got Rachel Pilgrim, who's one of Pharmacy Research UK's newest award holders. She was awarded one of 2 PhD studentship grants earlier this year. Rachel has worked as a hospital pharmacist for the last 10 years in a variety of acute NHS settings. And alongside her clinical practice, she's been gaining research experience as a clinical academic intern with the University of Bath, and is now looking forward to commencing her PRUK funded PhD studentship. Looking forward to hearing more about it.
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you for having me today. So yeah, as Malcolm said, I'm very at the sort of early stages of my research career. A lot of imposter syndrome going on over here. So forgive me if I'm a bit nervous. So, I just need to press a. Not me. There I am. Lovely. Well, thank you very much. So, I'm starting this project next year, so I've got a year to sort of build myself up to it, and it's all about looking at whether medication is a barrier to breastfeeding, and how we can make things better. So just a bit of a background. Breastfeeding is extremely important in terms of the public health benefits. Has health benefits that have been widely shown for both the mothers and their infants, and that comes with quite a lot of economical benefits as well. This is consequently reflected in both national and international guidance, which recommends exclusive breastfeeding up to the age of 6 months. The last time this was looked at in the UK, which was quite a long time ago, only 1% of babies were actually getting to that 6 months, so quite low. It's possible that medication perhaps might be causing some of those low rates. It's obviously is a tricky area. Medicines are often not licensed in this population, but usually from post-marketing data and things, information comes out that, whether it can be safe or not. NICE guidance sort of reflects this by encouraging use of supplementary resources, which there are quite a few available, rather than what it says in the BNF, because that tends to be based more on the licence information and tends to suggest you avoid combining the two. There was a survey conducted in 2017 in the UK that did point towards the fact that there might be a bit of problem with medication and breastfeeding, with 71% of mothers agreeing that breastfeeding could prevent me from taking medication. So, so for the last couple of years, I have been working on a systematic review as part of a clinical academic internship, and that's been with my 2 supervisors, Matthew and Sarah there, who are taking me forwards into the PhD as well. So I know them very well already, so that's great. So I've been looking at this, sort of what we know already about this. There's very limited UK specific data exploring this medication breastfeeding barrier. What I have found from studies in other sort of high income countries, between 2 and 18% of women who need a medicine are choosing to stop breastfeeding due to that medicine. There is then a cohort of studies that also look specifically at women with chronic conditions, and that's as many as 58% are stopping breastfeeding because of medicines. Of 28 medicines that have been named as being involved, only one of these is deemed sort of truly hazardous. The rest are safe or can be used with a degree of monitoring or, caution, benefit consideration. So there is some evidence that healthcare professionals play a key role in this decision making. So both a protective role, provided they've got the right training, but also a role in telling people to stop breastfeeding when they possibly don't need to. There was also one paper in Greece that looked at sort of background risk factors for making this decision. So lower educational level, less experience of breastfeeding, going back to work, and C-section might make women more likely to make that decision to stop breastfeeding because of a medicine. So the aims and objectives for my PhD project is to look at this in the UK in a bit more detail. So firstly, I want to estimate the prevalence of medication-related breastfeeding discontinuation and comment on how many of those could have safely combined the two. I want to look for any risk factors in terms of a woman's background characteristics. I want to explore what is influencing women in making these decisions. And then finally, I want to use everything I take there to start to design an intervention that will hopefully make things better. So it's going to be 3 phases. Firstly, I'm going to conduct surveys to start to get some information on how frequently this happens and look at risk factors and what is influencing women to make that decision. So I'll recruit 300 women, 100 from 3 diverse areas to try and get a broad range of women. I'll recruit them prenatally and follow them up periodically after they've had their baby. And I'll get some quantitative data from that with some open-ended questions where needed. The second stage will be semi-structured interviews. So I will interview a subset of 20 participants from the first phase that have had sort of interesting answers or that are sort of have different backgrounds that I want to explore a little bit more. And then finally, phase 3 will be the intervention development. So I'll use what I found to hopefully come up with some ideas for how we can make things better. And I'll conduct some co-production workshops with key stakeholders to try and figure this out. Take this away, come up with something, that could work as an intervention and feed this back to the stakeholders. And then that's where the project will end, which was I found quite hard to sort of rein in the big ideas about what we wanted to do and what's enough for a PhD. Just quickly on sort of future aspirations, obviously this seems very much like the groundwork of what could be. So I would want to continue seeking funding to further roll out any intervention. And I think this project's probably going to throw up lots of side questions as well. So I think there's going to be loads, to continue researching going forwards. And I'm really keen to give back because I've taken a lot. I feel like I've had so much support from my supervisors, the university, PRUK. I'm not really giving much back yet. So I would love to be able to start using what I've learned to help mentor other pharmacists in the future as they start their research journey. I think that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I really look forward to keeping an eye on how things progress for you over the next few years. Exciting stuff. And finally, in terms of our previous PRUK award holders, I'd like to introduce Debbie Bhattacharya. Debbie is a professor of behavioural medicine at the University of Leicester and a primary care pharmacist. Debbie leads a portfolio of research applying behavioural science to medicine-related challenges. She's also a former member of PRUK's scientific advisory panel. And before that, she was one of our very early recipients of a PRUK UK project grant back in 2013. So Debbie, over to you.
This can be obvious.
It's
Oh, yeah, it is. Okay, sorry.
That's all right.
Thanks. Okay, so thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to share my experiences of PRUK and the awarding of funds. And I think that there are kind of two things that I've taken away from this is one, that obviously it invests in healthcare research, but also that investment in the profession of pharmacy. And we've already started to see that come through in the messages. So building an intervention, we've talked about how about a little bit, so David particularly talking about impact on kind of healthcare. To get a study, to get an intervention, to go from that idea, I think this could be good, to actually being implemented into practice takes a lot of time and a lot of money. So, and it takes millions because we need that evidence, that large scale testing evidence. So, given that, you're going to invest millions and millions in this large scale testing, we need to go through that process of making sure that we've got all our ducks aligned. And there are a number of steps where things can and often do go wrong, and kind of picked out some of the classic ones. So firstly, the intervention itself, it was a great idea, but then we've seen from earlier presentations how it really does need to be developed based on what's already been learned, based on theory. And if we don't do that, it's likely to fall flat on its face. We've got a great intervention. What we now need to do is design the trial. So in designing the trial, one of the key challenges, and I've been kind of had so many grants where we've started developing, think, how the heck are we going to tell whether it works? And that seems really obvious that you would be able to do that, but picking an outcome measure that's sensitive to change, that is proximal enough to the thing that you're trying to test, and that you're actually going to be able to reliably collect is really, really difficult. So often we never get to that, large scale trial phase because we just cannot pick a sensible primary outcome measure. And then the final thing is, you've got a great intervention, you've got a primary outcome measure that looks like it's going to be feasible to collect. Then you go to definitive trial, you need your, I don't know how many thousand patients, and you're a couple of months in, you've got 2 or 3 recruiting. And, these are kind of the classic time points at which things can go wrong. So for me, what PRUK has done is helped really produce a solid foundation for a research project that then can go to large scale testing. Because yes, the large scale testing is millions, but this is time and money as well, but not huge amounts of funds. And we also, there's been mention about that rigor of going through the evaluation process and the SAP committee reviewing it. So that underpinning development is so important. So what and then kind of when I put a grant together, there's 3 key things that I think we need to achieve in the underpinning work. One, we need to know what the size of the problem is, what the nature of the problem is, and then thirdly, what has already been tried. So I'm going to quickly talk through a couple of projects that have gone to definitive trial stage. Both have been supported by Pharmacy Research UK to be able to answer these questions, to make sure that we had that solid foundation to be able to go on and secure the large scale funds. So the first one is practitioner behaviour change. So it's designed to support geriatricians and pharmacists to proactively stop medicines where the chance of harm outweighs benefit. And then the second one is patient behaviour change. So this is designed to support patients to take their medicines as prescribed. And so this is the pathway for them. So they've both got now to definitive trial stage. And they started at very different time points. So Charmer, both actually are also parts of PhDs. Charmer started, can't remember how many years ago now, 8 years ago. I mean, that's what it adds up to, doesn't it? And moved at quite a fast trajectory to a definitive trial. IMAB-Q was a much longer haul, but we have got there and we've just started the trial now. But I'd like to talk about a little more about kind of what was involved with that. So IMAB-Q started as a PhD that was funded by an HEI. And that allowed us to do some of the work. But remember those kind of all those different stages where things can go wrong. So we got some of the work done, but then we got to the stage where, we still can't quite move forward. So this is where PRU came with that project award. And it was £40,000. So it's quite a sizable amount for PRUK, and it allowed us to do that extra work that we needed. And then I still hadn't got it right. We then still needed more funds. So we had another 115k from NIHR to work out what the primary outcome measure was. And then finally, they invested 2.7 in actually going to definitive trial. Oh, and sorry, and the other thing is the investment in the individual. So we've got someone, so Claire was a community pharmacist when she joined as a PhD student, and then at the end was then able to go straight into a lectureship, and now has a clinical academic role. And PRUK helped that happen. And then the second one, Sean's in the audience here. So his was that much faster paced project that has gone to definitive trial and is due to finish in about 18 months. And he has, again, on quite a fast trajectory now, moved to associate professor. So it has allowed, Pharmacy Research UK has allowed that that investment in both the profession and in projects that were important to us as a profession. And I'm going to talk a little bit more now about the projects themselves so you can see where PRUK fitted in. So thinking about these kind of three things that need to be in place, the size of the problem. So for both trauma and IMAB-Q, about 1 in 2 people were affected. So I kind of knew, right, we're onto a fairly good thing here. That's a large proportion of the population that's impacted by the problem. So size of the problem, ticked. We've got big problem. In terms of the nature of the problem for trauma, so we needed to understand what was actually going on. So the reality is, if Sean's a hospital pharmacist, I've done some work in hospital, we knew that medicines weren't being proactively stopped. But of course, you need that evidence, you need that foundation. So what he did is used electronic data, prescribing data, and was able to establish that only a very small proportion, so less than 1% of medicines are proactively stopped. And you can see, and this is the sort of thing when you think about funders, we had all the stats and all the data. This is what people really want to see to sell a problem. We've got 1 in 2 people prescribed a potentially inappropriate medicine, and look how many of them we're managing to stop. That's a problem. So that's how you take the hearts and minds of people with you. So we had that first kind of, this is a big problem that needs addressing, and it's not being addressed. So the second thing is, all right, it's not happening, but actually do people want it to happen? So we needed to do some work with patients and members of the public. And this is where PRUK came in. So the first part was funded by the PhD, and now PRUK funded us to do a questionnaire distributed by 2 hospitals. And something that hasn't really been talked about yet is, so not only do you get funds from PRUK, you've got to get something magic called portfolio adoption. So PRUK is a non-commercial partner of NIHR. And so what that means is when you have something that's PRUK funded, your project is then eligible to be adopted by the NIHR portfolio. And what that gives you is access to additional support. So we had funds to be able to pay the hospitals to recruit patients for us. We also had all of the NIHR infrastructure available to us to support recruitment as well. So it became a no-brainer for them. So what could have been really quite a challenging time for the PhD student. It became quite easy because of, oh, it's not, wasn't, I know you did so much. It made easier by having funds and having, you know, this portfolio adoption, because you can see eyes light up in the hospitals when you say portfolio adopted. So we've got the answer here that 99.8% of patients and family members expect this to happen. So we now know it's not happening, but people want it to happen. So then the final thing is, why is it not happening? And so again, PR UK came in. So Sean applied for a second round of funding. And so we got the portfolio adoption. So we've got 4 hospitals to give 54 geriatricians and pharmacists. You can't do that without portfolio adoption, without the additional investment. So you've got this kind of HEI funding of PhDs, and then you've got this additional investment and NIHR infrastructure that comes in when you get a PRUK award. So they were then, so from doing this work with geriatricians and pharmacists, we were really able to unpick what the key barriers and enablers were. So now we know what the size of the problem is. We've got a really good understanding of the nature of the problem, and we need to understand now what's already gone forward before us, how we can design the intervention. So Sean then looked to see, right, what we know what the barriers and enablers are. What strategies can we now select to address those barriers and enablers? So again, we had some support from Pharmacy Research UK, and that enabled him to then design this theory and evidence-based intervention that is CHARMA. And that was then the springboard for Sean to then write the grant application. So it's then still in a PhD and a co-applicant, moving towards co-applicant on a programme grant, and they don't hand those out easily. So to get a programme grant in such an early stage in your career is a really positive thing that PR UK made happen. So we had all of those things in place for CHARMA, and it is now at the stage of a definitive trial being tested across 24 hospitals in England. So that's CHARMA. The second one was IMAP-Q. So we talked about the size of the problem, 1 in 2 affected. In terms of the nature of the problem and what's already been tried, so the PhD student, so this was Claire Eastall, she did a systematic review, meta-analysis and focus groups, all of that was in her PhD. And then we kind of think, well, okay, now we need to work out what the intervention is. So that's when we then applied for more funding from, for some funding from PR UK, who then allowed us to go, and that allowed us to test IMAP-Q and really refine it to give us that intervention. So this, I think, is what's really special about this, is that portfolio adoption, we included community pharmacies, and that was quite challenging, actually. Community pharmacies were not used to being involved in NIHR portfolio studies, but that helped us to get them research ready. It paid for the GCP training and stuff. So that was all so positive to have 8 community pharmacists recruiting those patients for us. So that gave us that final intervention, which we then knew was effective at identifying people who don't take their medicines as prescribed, and then also diagnosing the barriers to adherence. And so where we are now is that the programme grant has been awarded. So that's under 2.7 million that NIHR have invested in this, and we're going towards testing across 38 medical practices. So really, so PR UK, I'm just so grateful for that input they've given at various stages along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fantastic, and it's my job at the end, and obviously it's thank you very much, Debbie, and obviously thank you to all of our speakers. I think the first challenge that I know everyone would have had is that there's so much information, fascinating stuff, and I think we set you all a massive challenge to try and compress all of that into these sort of 10-minute slots, and you did amazingly. So thank you very much to all our speakers. I know I'm now holding everyone back from the teas, coffees and cakes, so I will not take long. Really just wanted to say, yeah, thank you very much to the speakers. Thank you very much to everyone for coming out today to this. It's really brilliant. It's something I think we'll hopefully look to do more of in future. And the networking session hopefully will be a really good chance to bring again all of these different experiences together, with a chance to share ideas, thoughts, knowledge, make new connections that will hopefully be helpful. There were a couple of things I was going to very quickly mention. Debbie, because she was so kind in talking about PRUK and what we've done, didn't mention the incubator that she's leading. So the Pharmacy Research Professionals Incubator is another potentially really valuable resource for people moving into their research journeys. As well as Debbie, we've got Charlotte here, I think, as well. So you can find out more about that, and Brian as well. So yeah, we're all here. And PRUK obviously supports with that and with the Pharmacy Research Advisory Group that David mentioned earlier. So we try and hopefully just support however we can all of these initiatives, and obviously just continue to fund fantastic new bits of research and incredible researchers to do the brilliant things that you do. We've got some of our partners here as well, which obviously is brilliant. We do a lot through partnership wherever we can, because I think, as Malcolm said at the start, we're a small organisation, but we've been able to just draw in lots and lots of extra resources that wouldn't come into pharmacy research otherwise by just partnering and finding like-minded organisations to work with. Yeah, we're very, very grateful to them and the support that they offer. I'm very grateful to all of you for coming. I won't go on any longer. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a really, for me, yeah, absolutely fascinating hearing all of the presentations, and hopefully lots more fascination and excitement to come as we get to actually meet each other and talk and share ideas as well. I think the food is all just around the corner there. So thank you very much indeed, everyone.
Let's go quick.
Yes.
The question is, do we just get political? But I can think of that. You know that we went to well back I haven't painted, but yeah, it's really quite lovely and that it feels quite easy.
Yes.
I was going to ask actually photos I might just go up and ask them someday. I'd love to be able to find it. But I'll go up to them. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I always say that I get this every year. Someone will get there. So, yeah, good. My little boy, we had him to India on Sunday, so I had to do everything. I helped him out and everything. Potentially on the pathway to smoke. So that was justice review. He's okay, he's okay. As long as steroids, correct, but yeah, he's the steroids and inhaler. Yeah, he's all right. Yeah. Yeah.